Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling, and today's topic is about a TV show, rather a web show that you could only find exclusively on WWE.com between 2011 and 2012, which lasted an astounding 67 weeks. I'm talking about NXT Redemption. This was season 5 of the original game show format of NXT. This is very unusual. It started out similar to its predecessors, seasons 1 through 4. Come season 5, the theme was redemption. All eliminated rookies had a second chance to come and compete to win NXT season 5, which meant originally that the winner could choose their own pro for NXT season 6. All the usual contests and challenges took place up until July or August of 2011. You know, they'd have the keg carrying competition, the monkey bar climb, whatever you want to call it, the dizzy bat challenge, a game where you knock the other guy off the other pedestal using these foam giant sword thingies, whatever. Anyways, it looked like too much fun at the theme park for the kids there, if you catch my drift. So, anyways, it ended up becoming another episode of Superstars, essentially, because it was devoid of all the challenges. They had something, when the challenges were, in fact, taking place, there was something the rookies earned called redemption points instead of what they used to call immunity points. Immunity points were used when you won a challenge to save yourself from elimination. That meant that you were immune that particular week. You could not get eliminated from NXT. And by this point, it wasn't just the pros that were in charge of deciding your fate, whether you stay or you go, but also the fans, the WWE Universe. God, they were really pushing that Universe stuff back then, weren't they? So, that's why it was so forced. Anyways, now we have redemption points, and the redemption points, your slate is not clean come the next week. So you accrue points every single week, and I believe Titus O'Neil had the most, though it was a moot point. It was rendered moot by the time this season finally ended. Titus O'Neil had 45 redemption points. And again, doesn't mean anything, but it is what it is. And we're going to talk about some of the contestants here, the rookies, if you will. So 6 rookies returned, and this is just the men, not the women, because season 3 was all women, but that's another story. By this point, they had 8 people originally in seasons 1 and 2, but then it was whittled down to 6 come season 3, and then season 4 had 6, as did season 5. 6 rookies and 6 pros, unless the pro was like a couple or a tag team or something like that. So the dynamics really shifted, and I think the ratings were so bad when it was on Sci-Fi a year prior, in 2010, that's why they moved it exclusively to WWE.com. And I was probably I was in college for the duration of that, and so I was probably like a small handful of people. I always like to say I was one of less than 10 people that actually watched this crap. It wasn't the worst crap in the world. It's not bad like WCW 2000 crappy, but certainly wasn't something that people are going to fondly look back on, let alone even remember. So I'm here to kind of dig way down deep for you tonight. So we had Titus O'Neil as one of the returning rookies from NXT Season 2, pardon me. And of all people, his pro was Hornswoggle. So how do you communicate with somebody who can't even speak to you, let alone not use American Sign Language? So somehow he was able to give Titus a long undefeated streak and encourage him week by week. And apparently Hornswoggle brought good luck. Luck of the Irish. Okay, there you go. So that would have made more sense had they gone that route, but they didn't. Darren Young from NXT Season 1 really came full circle. A year prior, he was in NXT Season 1, and then he becomes a member of Nexus and main events SummerSlam 2010, albeit he's one of 14 men in that giant main event. And now he's back, and he sort of floundered for a while on Raw, and then mostly on Superstars, the Raw portion of the show. So he floundered there, and then he returned back to NXT Redemption. So I don't understand how he exactly became a rookie again. Wouldn't you be considered a pro if you were already on the main roster? Or so the story goes here. So that was a huge storyline loophole that did not make sense to me. So, anyways, Darren Young had Chavo Guerrero as his pro, who midway through the season, Chavo asked for his release in June of 2011 and was granted it. So it left Young without a pro, but we're going to talk more about that later as far as what happened to the pros. Connor O'Brien, he was later on more famously became just Connor, one half of the Ascension with Victor. Victor wasn't involved in this yet. So Connor O'Brien, he had this rat-like character, like his facial features made him look like a rat. And he'd always be chasing after pieces of cheese, but I think he sort of dropped that persona come NXT Redemption and tried to take on an MMA-based gimmick. And that was because his pro was Vladimir Kozlov, the Russian competitor trained in Samba and Jiu-Jitsu and all other forms of fighting. So the next one was a favorite of mine because he really he turned himself around and did a complete 180. Lucky Cannon from NXT Season 2 returned with Tyson Kidd as his pro. And Tyson Kidd was fresh off splitting from David Hart Smith in the Hart Dynasty. Lucky Cannon was a do-gooder in NXT Season 2, just kind of this bland, all-around good guy, like a Rocky Maivia, if you will. And the reason he got the name Lucky, because he was in a serious car accident, supposedly, that could have ended his life, and he got the name from his friends, so he says. And Lucky Cannon, now come NXT Redemption, he develops a Ric Flair-esque personality. He's coming down with the feather boa robes, and he's got lipstick on his tights or whatever, and, he's kind of a ladies' man, very arrogant, brash, and cocky. Lucky Cannon had the biggest character transformation, and I'm surprised that didn't get him much further, because, I don't think he lasted in WWE much long after being gone from Redemption. But man, he was entertaining as hell to watch, and I think I liked him the best as far as like who could cut the best promos, and he was okay in the ring, but you can rough out those edges smoothly over time. Byron Saxton, of all people, the backstage commentator today, he started out as a wrestler, though not a great one. He was terrible in the ring. Why did they bring this guy back? Byron Saxton had Yoshi Tatsu as his pro, and there was a little love story going on between Yoshi Tatsu and one of the co-hosts, Maurice, and Maurice took Tatsu's attention away from Saxton, which understandably made Byron feel left out and, fed to the wolves here. He was ditched. So, there was a lot of tension with that rookie-pro relationship. And then the last person, certainly not least, is Jacob Novak. Does anybody remember Jacob Novak? I do. And his pro was JTG, doing the singles career at this point in time. Jacob Novak was a young man whose real name was Drew Moltzon, and he was from Kent, Washington, and he looked just like Kurt Hawkins, I kid you not, his facial features. He had long, shoulder-length blonde hair, always wore it in a ponytail, and sometimes wore it down, and he had a very distinctive hook nose, and he wore all white. He had a white blazer, white trunks, knee pads, boots, the whole shebang. So you would have thought he's kind of looked bland upon first glance, but he had a good look. He had a good aura to him. He was 6'5", probably a good 250 pounds or whatever. He was kind of similar in size to Jack Swagger. He even mentioned in one of his rookie testimonials that he's inspired by Jack Swagger because a man that size usually doesn't move that quickly, but Jacob actually could work probably the best out of all these rookies. I mean, people won't say great things about him because he didn't really have a long career in wrestling. I don't even know what the hell he's doing now. I can't find anything on Drew Moltzon. But Jacob Novak, his stage name, he could bounce off the ropes into a clothesline, and I remember him climbing a ladder, winning the first challenge of NXT Season 4. So he was impressive, but I didn't like that he had to turn into what JTG's character was like, the thug or whatever. And so anyways, you got your 6 rookies here, and they competed in challenges, and over time they eliminated people. Jacob Novak was the first to go, then followed by Byron Saxton, then Lucky Cannon, which was a shocker, and then finally Connor O'Brien. So it left us down to the 2 men who started out as the biggest rivals, then they became tag team partners and tag team champions many years later. Darren Young and Titus O'Neil. They later become the primetime players. But things weren't always easy for Titus and Darren. Now, they added one caveat here in the form of Derek Bateman. He returned midway through the season with Daniel Bryan as his pro. Daniel Bryan was originally Derek Bateman's pro from NXT Season 4. Now, I think Bateman had to have some surgery after NXT Season 4, so I think he was originally slated to come back in the beginning, but they had to delay it because of the injury, and then he comes back when, Novak, Saxton, Cannon, and O'Brien have already been eliminated. So, let's see, where do we go from here now? So, if you were to ask me who actually won this season, that's tough to say, and I just go by Wikipedia. Not sure, it's not the greatest source for factual information. I mean, it is what it is, because anybody can edit it. But I'd say Derek Bateman won by default, unofficially, because O'Neil and Young moved to SmackDown right after WrestleMania 28, after John Laurinaitis got that big win in the 12-man tag, got control over both Raw and SmackDown against Teddy Long. So John Laurinaitis was responsible for Young and O'Neil being transferred to SmackDown and thus ending their tenure on NXT. So NXT over time brought back other competitors who were former NXT talent or lower card people you'd see on Superstars from either the Raw or SmackDown brand. Percy Watson, Showtime, Percy Watson, loved that that character from that gimmick from NXT Season 2, I believe it was. Now, he returned not as an official rookie and did not have a pro, and he wasn't even a pro himself, but just as a competitor because he was, traveling with the main roster, though still competing in FCW a whole lot. I don't know why he didn't return as an official Redemption contestant, but that's beside the point. So we had Showtime Percy Watson, and he still had his Showtime Percy Watson show, a little talk show segment. He exuded a lot of charisma. He reminded me so much of The Rock in the beginning. He was nowhere near the level of Dwayne Johnson, but he definitely had the talking down pat, and very quick in the ring too, especially that float over DDT, which he dubbed the Persecution. He also had Alex Riley returning, fresh off his semi-main event run with The Miz. He was kind of playing second fiddle there because Miz was his mentor, his pro in NXT Season 2. Riley really fell down the card significantly. I think it all started with a joke that he misinterpreted from John Cena, and then it led to an argument between him and Cena bitched about it, and that's why Riley's push went down the toilet. Now, that's just what I read on the dirt sheet, so take it, say what you will about it. Heath Slater and Justin Gabriel also returned, former tag team champions from the original Nexus and the Core. Michael McGillicuddy, who later became Curtis Axel. God, what stupid names some of these guys had. And I also forgot to mention, speaking of personalities, Derek Bateman later became Ethan Carter III in TNA, and then when he came to WWE for a short time, he was EC3. So he actually ended up back on NXT when NXT was in its full sail stage. So good for EC3, but he didn't do much on the main roster. So, anyways, moving on, we had a winner from NXT Season 4 return in the form of Johnny Curtis, better known as Fandango, but the Fandango character had not been developed yet. So he was doing these stupid puns on SmackDown. I've got a chip on my shoulder. I'm not going to cry over spilled milk. I'm an ace in the hole. The only thing that proves that is that the writing is on the wall. These puns were actually literal, and it was just the stupidest thing, and he lacked a lot of charisma in the beginning, but the Fandango character really turned him around tenfold. The Usos, because they were really low on the totem pole in the tag team division, were appearing on that show. It's not what you see now with main event Jey Uso and Big Jim, but Jimmy and Jay, yes, they teamed up quite a bit when they needed to have some tag matches or people to put in tag matches with or against. Now, as for the ladies, you had AJ Lee coming back for a little while, and then she started dating Daniel Bryan on SmackDown. That led to her push on the main roster. Caitlyn, who won NXT Season 3, evidently returned back to her home turf. I guess they weren't really doing much with her or anything really on the main roster. Maxine, oh gosh, not Maxine Dupree, but Maxine, who looked strikingly similar to Melita. She was a Mexican-Italian, Puerto Rican, mixed-race gal. She was like the Ice Queen. I think that was her gimmick because, she had a very cold, nasty demeanor in her personality. So that manifested itself well because she was, somebody you didn't want to come across in a dark alley. Certainly, you don't want to get on her bad side. You also had Natalya coming back. She was sort of not officially a pro, but kind of mentored the other girls, as she tended to do majority of her career, as we also saw in Total Divas with Eva Marie and JoJo. Tamina had a few appearances, as did Alicia Fox, and then Maurice. This was kind of the end of Maurice in her first run until she returned in 2016. She was a co-host with Matt Stryker. Matt Stryker was the host throughout all 5 seasons of the original NXT. Maurice, I think, was in a storyline with Hornswoggle, and then I think that was the last night I saw of her. In August 2011, she asked for a release, and it was granted. Not sure if she was dating Mike Mizanin yet. So, after 67 weeks, and then, the challenges diminished, the whole rookie-pro relationships diminished. Hornswoggle went to SmackDown, Chavo asked for his release, Kozlov was released, Kid, Tatsu, JTG kind of remained on the show, but weren't treated like a big deal. Dan O'Brien moved up, done with NXT, as he should have been in the first place. So it's just matches, and it was kind of meaningless, directionless for the most part, and they had a few little storylines. Oh, and I also forgot to mention, towards the end of NXT, the most entertaining act was Kurt Hawkins and Tyler Rex. They just goofed off on NXT because they weren't being pushed on either Raw or SmackDown. They were seen here and there on Superstars. Their story's a funny one because I think they started a YouTube series, much like Zack Ryder, Kurt Hawkins' real-life best friend. It was called the Mid-Card Mafia or something. They were going to use that name on the main roster, but I think Vince McMahon or somebody higher up, like a Kevin Dunn, got wind of it, and they were breaking too much kayfabe and talking about how they weren't happy with their pushes. I guess Zack Ryder kind of did a similar thing. They were trying to get over on their own, and I guess they saw what happened with Ryder, and they didn't want the same thing to happen. Or actually, they did want the same thing to happen to Hawkins and Rex, but they didn't want to throw the fans a bone, make them like the tag champs or something. So they kept them on NXT, and Hawkins was such a dick walking around with that cane and sticking it in people's faces and, just kind of saying mean and nasty things, I guess. And Tyler Rex wasn't much better, though he wasn't much of a promo guy. I always liked Kurt Hawkins. I met him, too. Really down-to-earth guy, just like Zach. Matt, I should say now. So, they were an entertaining act, and then they had this little brief storyline where they abducted Matt Stryker, stuffed him in a box or something. I don't even remember the rest of it. It was so long ago, I didn't even go back and watch it since it was spring of 2012. So eventually this shit all comes to an end after 67 weeks, and then NXT relocates to Full Sail University. Triple H, who was starting his corporate position around that time, gathered all the FCW talent in a big, giant lecture hall. This was at Full Sail, I believe. They show a clip of it in one of the programs originally on the network, WWE Network. So we're taking NXT off the road with SmackDown, and we're bringing it here to Full Sail University, and it's going to replace Florida Championship Wrestling. I'm glad it did, because it's certainly led to some of the best competitors that we have today. Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and of course Dean Ambrose, but he's not with WWE anymore. They were actually the last FCW match, the 3 Shield members, aforementioned Shield members, in a triple threat match, and I heard it was really great. I have to actually go and watch it, so it's on my to-do list. There was going to be, I think at one point they wanted to continue with NXT Season 6. And they were going to include whoever won, which we think was Derek Bateman, but we don't know for sure. You would have had Big E Langston, Seth Rollins, Leo Kruger, who later became Adam Rose, Bo Dallas, Unico, later Sin Cara, and of course Jinder Mahal. That was going to be the main cast of NXT Season 6. This was just an idea, and they had promo pictures and videos taken, but it never led to anything big. No, it never led to fruition. So NXT really gradually on its own became popular because the homegrown talent. Seth Rollins was the inaugural NXT champion. Look at him today. Back to being Mr. Money in the Bank, but he's going to win the world title in no time, I think, the rate that he's going. Roman Reigns, perfect example. Now, they were never actual contestants, but certainly they grew from that. Darren and Titus certainly grew in the tag team division. Connor, he tried with Victor. They were over on NXT. They were such an overact between 2013, 2014, but then they were treated like a second-rate Legion of Doom by the time they made it to the main roster in 2015, killing all their credibility. I'm talking about the Ascension. So that didn't work out as planned. Lucky Cannon, don't know what really happened to him after wrestling. Same with Jacob Novak. And Byron Saxton, I'm glad he stuck to announcing, though not the greatest of all time. I didn't mention him in the announcer's video, so I'm sorry, Byron, but didn't make the cut. So, yes, NXT, it had great matches, and I started watching every week. It was better at the time. I want to say 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, then I stopped in 2017. So I didn't like when they started taking it on the road. It needed to be in its home base. That's why it was so good when it was small. It's too big now, I think. Anyways, NXT was better than what Raw or SmackDown was offering, so I was heavily invested. Anyways, that's about all I've got for now. It's been another great edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling, and until next time, everybody, bye-bye.